So in previous weeks, we talked about different mitzvahs that relate to how we treat one another. And we're doing all this Torah learning as a merit for our brothers and sisters in Israel. And the mitzvahs that we learned about relate to how we need to interact with one another. And we learned about feeling the pain of another Jew, and we learned about loving another Jew, and we learned about not standing idle when the blood of your brother is being spilt, and all these mitzvahs that relate to how we treat one another. And those are all very important. And the importance of unity cannot be understated. And we've talked about also in these classes and in other series about how all Jews are intrinsically tied together, and all of our neshamas, all of our souls come from one root source. They're all a piece from Hashem himself. And therefore what happens to one of us affects the other, and we need to take care of each other. We need to take care of one another. So we understand our responsibility. We know that we need to love each other, and we need to help each other, and we need to do kindness from each other. But what we're going to address today is trying to come up with a strategy on how to actually do that. Because it doesn't matter how often you learn about how important it is to help one another. We have character traits that we're born with, that we seem to just have, that can make it hard to do that. And on one hand, we want to do good things. On the other hand, we can find it difficult. One of the hardest things you can do in your whole life is to transform your bad midos, bad character traits. To uproot them is one of the most difficult challenges we have on planet Earth. And in a sense, it's a big part of our mission. So what I want to talk today is a new approach in understanding our bad midos. Okay, we're going to call the character traits midos here. Our bad midos, and what they're there for, and how to engage with them in a meaningful way. And the notion that I want to do away with is a tendency to believe that bad midos get in my way of doing mitzvahs. I want to do this and this mitzvah, but unfortunately I have a tendency within me that holds me back from doing that. That's not the proper attitude. Bad midos do not get in our way. They're not like, I want to serve Hashem in this and this and this way, and unfortunately I got to deal with this obstacle, which is my midos. That's not the perspective. So I'm going to read here from the book. I'm going to do a little bit of reading today, the Chovas HaTalmidim, okay? The Student's Obligation, written by the Pius Sessner Rabbi, which is a brilliant writing in itself. I highly recommend to anyone who can to buy this book and read it. I'm reading it in English. No, it has both Hebrew and English here.
Okay.
And and it reads very well in English. So this chapter, which we're going to do select parts of, is called To Transform Bad Midos into Spiritual Light. Okay? So he starts off by saying that people often encounter issues that appear to be contradictory because they have only viewed the subject's external manifestation and failed to penetrate its inner reality. Had they delved into the heart of the issue, they would have seen that there's really no contradiction at all. There are no questions, no answers. Rather, all is one integrated issue that branches off in different directions. Okay, so now, keep in mind we're 200 pages into his book here, but he addresses the reader and says, at this point in reading my book, you may feel that there's a contradiction in the messages that I've been given. Something doesn't match up. First, he wrote very reassuring words in earlier chapters about how every single Jew has the possibility, the capability to elevate themselves spiritually. Okay, I'll read from here. First, he assures me that I can elevate myself spiritually and become a gadol b'Yisrael, a great person, even if I don't feel that I possess greatness or that I'm particularly gifted, by virtue of the fact that I have hidden within me a heavenly treasure house, a special holiness that even I am not consciously aware of. Through physical work and spiritual exertion, it will reveal itself and be elevated. But then he admits, he referring to himself, the writer, that there are bad character traits within me and tells me that I should improve them. I accept that I can't feel the holiness within me. But why is it that I am deficient and suffer from different spiritual, problems or issues that are holding me back? And where did these negative midos come from? Why are they embedded in my soul as if they are part and parcel of its nature if I possess within myself a treasure house of holiness? Okay, so that's the contradiction. The contradiction of life is that we are told, and it is true, that we are holy. We are intrinsically holy, and we are intrinsically good, and we can all become great. And there's nobody who is held back by anything that can prevent him from, if he tries, if he pushes, from becoming great. But then there's this negative part of myself, which is basically always in the way. So how do we deal with this, contradiction of our inner self? But as we said, our issue is only a contradiction if you look at it superficially. We, however, cannot remain with the external layer. We cannot achieve our purpose in life with it alone. All that we have discussed about improving character traits up until now, how to restrain ourselves, how to conquer our negative behavior so that we don't destroy ourselves or others. Okay, well, it sounds like it's been a good read. It sounds like until now he's been talking about how to conquer our negative behavior and restrain our negative tendencies. But he says that even all those strategies will not suffice if we want to achieve our true purpose. We've got to do something way greater. What we ultimately have to do is transform those negative traits to beacons of light, to spiritual bonfires that will enable us to serve our Creator. We must take our entire internal beings and mold them into a holy chosen nation, a kingdom of nobles, as Hashem wants and stipulated for us from the outset.
I have an answer.
Yeah.
It's not my answer, it's the Rookie Cabell's answer. Self-awareness, practice, take yourself a mentor, and take yourself friends.
It sounds like a great lineup of strategies.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right, let's see what he says. I'm gonna read the whole idea from him, and then afterwards we'll talk about it or share strategies or questions. Okay, so the basic ideas that he said so far, he's just said that there's many strategies on how to restrain yourself and rein in your negative tendencies and behavior. That's good. That battle with the Yetzer Hara, it's a battle of self-control, is amazing. That's a lot of our mission in this world. But it's not enough. That is not enough to lead us to our true purpose. Our true mission is not just fighting our negative traits, but somehow transforming them into beacons of light. And I'm looking forward to reading about how you do that. Although human intellect, which views things superficially, sees our character traits as negative, Hashem sent us the Baal Shem Tov, a holy man of God, and his holy students who followed him and illuminated the Jewish people. And they taught us, okay, he was the Baal Shem Tov was the founder of the Hasidic movement of Judaism, basically, a few hundred years ago. And they taught us that the character traits of a Jew are intrinsically holy. They have their source in the heavens from where they make their way down to earth. It is only in this world and in the physical body which exists in this world that their appearance changes. They appear to be negative if we don't know how to utilize them properly. And he gives an analogy. It's like clear water that is placed in a filthy glass bottle. On the outside, the water will look dirty because of its receptacle. Because it's in a dirty container, it'll look dirty. But that doesn't mean it's dirty. Inside, it could be clear, clean, and pure. So things have a twisted perspective because we're in a very physical world. But really, all character traits are holy and need to be, and we need to use them properly. Okay, we're gonna read how to do that.
We're pure on the inside, but we have the dirt on the outside. I mean, obviously that's just using that as an example or an analogy. But we're pure, and we just have to muster the strength to counter our Yetzer Hara.
I don't know yet. Let's continue on and read till the end, and then we'll talk about it. Okay? Let's see where he's going with this. The truth is, I'm skipping a bunch of pages of very deep ideas of Hasidus and Kabbalah, which are important, but for the purpose of keeping it as relatable and practical as possible, I'm going to skip that part. The truth is that the character traits within us are nothing less than divine seviros, which have been infused into us. Okay, sephiros is a Kabbalistic term and refers to a sort of trait. But we're not going to get into that now.
It's not Sphera. I mean, is that the Sphera? Go up to this. Yeah.
It's a deep Kabbalistic idea which has a lot of ways of presenting itself in Judaism, actually. There's a lot of ways. But the essence of what it is, I mean, it's not like unlearnable. It's just beyond the scope of today, but they're very powerful ideas, yeah. We should be grieving over the fact that these internal chambers of holiness, these beacons of light, have been distorted and damaged. Hashem drew love into us from his holy abode so that we would love him, serve him, and utilize that love to become like his angels. Instead, we feel a love for nonsense. And the attribute of might that Hashem gave us so that we'd be able to feel awe for him and fear him like the angels do, we use instead to feel a negative kind of fear, anger, and baseless hatred. Okay, he's showing us how Hashem gives us beautiful, amazing character traits, and we tend to use them the wrong way. Hopefully we also use them the right way, but that's kind of something that we're guilty of. We have a love that we're supposed to love him, and instead we have a love for, desires that we have that are unholy or even forbidden. We have an attribute of might. Hashem wants us to use that to feel awe and fear for Hashem and for Judaism, and instead we use it the wrong way. And even channeled out of that is anger that we feel towards other people and hatred that we feel towards other people. This is all just misusing very divine character traits. My dear child, he reads this like he writes this book like he's writing a letter to you, to every reader. My dear child, we have told you time and again that you are your own primary educator. If you don't take control of your life so that you will be the captain of your own ship, then you are liable to have your life's ship smashed and drowned in the raging sea of this world's physical desires and the aspirations of the people who inhabit it. When this happens, your teachers and mentors will not be able to help you, God forbid. That's why it's imperative that we make every effort to explain this concept in a way that can be understood at your level of comprehension. Even these character traits that you see as a negative are essentially beacons of light, holy sephiros that we are given, that were placed into you. If you can grasp this idea, it will be much easier for you to perfect these midos and restore them to their original state of holiness. That, after all, is the root of every cure, to accurately diagnose the cause of the illness and to discover where it hides. Okay, so first of all, he's giving a very important message to the student. This is a letter. This book is basically a message that he wrote to students. That's why the book is called The Student's Obligation.
He mentioned the mentor and friends right there.
Actually, he mentioned that they won't be able to help you if you don't take control of and to steer your own ship.
Self-awareness.
Okay, it could be. So he said, this is a very important message in general, that we can learn a lot of ideas and we can have a lot of rabbis and we can have a lot of friends, but as our sages have told us in Eina Nili Mili, if I will not be for me, who will be for me? We are ultimately the captain of our own ship. We're responsible. If we're taking control of ourselves and we're working on ourselves, then all tools and resources and books and ideas and teachers and mentors and friends will be a wonderful help to help us, to help us do what we want to do anyway. But we're responsible for ourselves. Okay, that's a little bit of a side point. But the point is that the idea we need to understand is that every single character trait that we are given is rooted in holiness. And we need to flush it out. We need to discover the root, like he says, if you're looking to diagnose an illness, you need to know the root cause of the illness. So in order to diagnose our bad character traits, we need to understand the root cause of them. The root cause of them is a natural character trait that God gave us, which is holy and is intended to be used for the right reasons. And what we're going to get to in a moment is that the way to improve our character traits is to understand why they were given to us. Okay, and then he brings out a difference. I think it's important to read out this point. He says there's a difference between the process of stimulating character growth and that of stimulating other human capabilities, such as wisdom and strength. A person can awaken his physical power without any outside, basically, stimulating factors. He can stretch himself to full height, clench his fists, and say, if one of my enemies would cross my path right now, I would beat him to a pulp. When he does that, he feels his physical strength intensifying, even if none of his enemies are before him, and even if he isn't thinking about any of them in particular. What's more, those who excel in physical strength need to wrestle with each other once in a while, not out of hate, not out of a desire to show off, but simply because their qualities of physical strength is contained within them and needs to be expressed. In other words, it is not the other fighter who stimulates his physical might to fight back. Rather, the opposite is true. His sense of physical power stimulates him to express himself through force. The same is true for stimulating wisdom. Sometimes a person will research a certain subject, not because the subject itself piqued his interest, but because the natural intellect within his brain needs to find expression, and it forces him to look for something to research. That's why wise people seldom waste their time. Their intellect pushes them to study and investigate, to learn and to discover. Okay, so there's different ways that we can awaken different traits within us, such as the pursuit of wisdom or the pursuit of physical strength, building our physical strength. But character doesn't work that way. Okay, so this is a very deep point, but I think it's very important to understand. Feelings of anger and fear are prompted by something outside. Were it not for that outside stimulus, the person would not be angry or afraid. People who are chronically angry and fearful for no reason are obviously emotionally unstable to one degree or another. The same goes for love. A person feels love when there is something to stimulate that love. A person might find himself in a situation where it's easier for him to love than to be angry, or easier to be angry than to love, but the emotion needs to be externally aroused. It doesn't happen automatically. There are people for whom it is easier to love, and there are those who are moved more easily to anger, but they each come to those respective emotions through something external. Unlike wisdom and strength, one does not feel, okay, this is the key. Unlike wisdom and strength, one does not come to feel love or anger spontaneously and then look for an object at which to direct his emotions, someone to love or someone to get angry at. Isn't that a profound point? You don't become lovey and then like, okay, what am I going to do with this love? Let me find somebody to love. Yeah. Or angry, I'm just mad right now. Who am I going to take it out on? Everything is triggered by something. There's something external that triggers our emotions to respond. Whatever that is. It could be nuanced. It could be complex. A person could be going through a lot of different issues at once, and maybe he'll just feel angry and he actually doesn't know what it is. But something is stimulating that within him. Okay, something is irking him that's making him bring out those feelings. You don't just become emotional without something that is in some way triggering that. Again, even if you have trouble pinpointing it, it's there. There's something there. There's something behind that. Okay? And this is why character traits assume negative forms within us. And we fail to experience emotions such as love and fear in their wholly pristine forms, or even in their neutral states, which we may then choose to direct either towards holy pursuits or towards pursuits that represent the opposite of holy. Instead, we experience these character traits as negative from the start, as love for nonsensical things, negative fear, anger, and hate. We do not feel them the same way that we feel wisdom or physical strength, as faculties that lay within us on a constant basis for us to utilize as we wish, since those are self-stimulating. Not so are character traits. Because they can only be stimulated externally, and from the time of childhood we have accustomed ourselves to be stimulated by our material world in which we find ourselves rooted, we see them in that state as physical, material characteristics. Okay? This is the key to this whole thing. When do you feel angry? When do you feel love? When something awakens that within you. What is going to awaken it? Well, I'll tell you. Anger is awakened all the time because people do things that annoy us all the time. So throughout our day, When is the character trait of anger awakened? Usually in a negative way, right? Usually in a negative way. The same, I would say the same with love. And let's define love as a desire or attraction to something, right? What is going to awaken love? Well, we live in a very mundane world. So, okay, maybe love is a strong word, but when I see something that looks delicious, it awakens in me a desire to have that. Or there's temptations we have. Some are okay and some are forbidden. But when they come my way, that's when that character trait of love is awakened. Like, oh, I want that. I have a desire for that. So essentially, most of the times that we bump into these character traits are not in a good scene, not in a good scenario. And that's why we associate it with negative. We associate a lot of character traits as negative because most of the time that we bump into them, it's not in a good setting. It's not in a good context.
That's not really what love is, though. I think you were describing like desire.
Right.
Yeah,
Love.
I would use the word
Like a
desire.
positive thing.
Right. Yeah, I was kind of paraphrasing from here. Instead, we experience these character traits as negative from the start, as love for nonsensical things. Okay, so yeah, love is a strong word.
I think
You can
love
change
is
it
like
for
love
desire.
For a person, or
Yeah.
like not like a
Yeah.
like,
Right.
Yeah, in the most full use of the
no,
word.
love is not a negative thing.
Right. Yeah. So let's use love as a desire for something, or desire.
Because normally you think desire and love is a positive trait, but it isn't necessarily, is it? Because
Desire is not.
right, I've never thought about in contrast to anger. So
You usually associate it with what? With negative desire?
no, I usually love and desire. I would
Yeah.
think of it as a positive trait, but
Okay.
it has obviously a lot of negative impacts as well. Just we should
Yeah.
anger,
Particularly
negative.
desire. We
Right.
desire
Right.
bad at least as much as we desire good. It feels like even more.
Absolutely, absolutely.
For sure.
But like right, anger you associate as being always a negative thing.
Exactly. Exactly.
Are you saying that like every single Mida has like anger, that the flip side of anger is passion, and that can be a good thing? Is that what you're saying? That like what you were saying before this, that like we have
Yeah.
these Midos and we have to see them in a positive way, that Hashem gave them to us, so we have to use them in a, like if the desire, if we feel a lot of desires, we should channel that into desire for holy things.
Let's see what he says. I didn't
Is it
finish the thought.
continuum? I mean, suppose there's a flip. Is it? You've got that.
Let's read what he says.
All right,
I'm
see
glad
what-
we're all curious to understand
Yes,
it. Let's see what he says. The more, okay, so here goes. The more we can preempt this tendency, and the earlier we can accustom a child to stimulate his emotions through holy pursuits, the more these characteristics will change and take on a positive form. Okay, I'm going to read that again. The more we could preempt this tendency, and the earlier we can accustom a child to stimulate his emotions through holy pursuits, the more these characteristics will change and take on a positive form. We will primarily experience them as positive. Love for Hashem, love for the Torah, love for the Jewish people, fear of Hashem, anger for those who transgress his will, especially for himself if he sees a degree of lowliness within him. Not sure what that means. Maybe it means anger for bad parts of himself. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you
Makes
can get
sense.
upset sometimes if you.
Yeah. This practice of utilizing midos positively is not only beneficial during childhood, it will stand a person in good stead for his entire life. The more one uses his midos negatively, the more he causes those heavenly attributes within him to manifest themselves in negative ways. Thus, in turn, brings out even worse characteristics within him. Once this occurs, how is one to devote himself to Hashem? What will serve as the conduit for Hashem's light to manifest itself within him? On the other hand, as one continues to perfect and sanctify his midos, he will not be left with midos that are merely harmless, like a goring bull that has been tied up, so that although it is a menace, it no longer has the ability to wreak damage. nor will he be left with merely physical expressions of his perfected character either. Rather, the spiritual nature of his midas will be much more easily revealed. The divine spheros from which he has been imbued will become manifest. They come from above, and he will use them to serve the Holy One above. And just as Hashem is encloaked in his divine midas in heaven, so he will be part of that person's midas down here on earth as well. Through them, Hashem will dwell within that person, enlighten his soul, and as it were, embrace and speak to his neshama. So the basic idea is we want to preempt our tendencies. Yes, character traits are different than other things that we work on, and the main time that we find them is when we're already triggered. Basically, we're already triggered. Our emotions are triggered all day by different things. So when our emotions are triggered, we see character traits as bad. And yes, we can try to fight that impulse, and we could fight the tendency to react in certain ways. That's a lot of what he talked about. There's a lot of value in that. That's basically the war with the Yetzer Hara. But if we want to really reach our goal, we need to preempt the tendencies by channeling our emotions into holy pursuits. That will lead us to use them in a holy way, and then we're basically using them the way Hashem wanted to. And that builds on itself. We'll feel more love. So basically, we'll sit down and we'll focus on loving Hashem. We're going to try to do things that bring out a love for Hashem and a love for Torah. Okay, I think let's use this example of love. If I awaken in myself very intentionally, or even better, if I can help my child do this from a young age, and it's really something that is brought out from a young age, but as he said, it's even for adults as well. So I'm going to go ahead and proactively try to awaken desire in me for holy things. I'm going to awaken in myself a desire for Hashem, a desire for Torah, a desire, a love for the Jewish people. And what he's suggesting is what you've just done is channeled your character traits the way they were intended to be, and you will then find less tendency to follow that same character trait of desire into negative things, into negative ways. Now, of course, it's still going to happen, and we'll still have to battle ourselves, but the way to really reach the core root issue is by channeling our traits for good. And then, I don't know, there's probably different ways this happens. In one way, we'll be so passionate about good that we'll be less inclined to follow our passion towards bad. Right? That's definitely a good strategy. If somebody struggles with different passions or desires, any therapist will tell you, but I think hopefully a rabbi will tell you the same thing. Bring out your passion for good things, for holiness. Spend your time on good things. Fill your time with positive energy and good expressions of your instincts. And then there's less time for other things. But maybe in a deeper sense, maybe what he's saying in a deeper sense is if you take God's traits, his spheros, his midos that he gave to you, and proactively channel them the right way, then you'll be preempting the tendency to only be dealing with them and using them in the wrong way. And then maybe that next time you come across a trigger for that emotion, maybe you won't be as triggered. Maybe that emotion will not just wake up and express itself. Maybe it has found happier places to express itself, and it won't feel as much of a need to only awaken that beast in a negative way. Okay, that's the idea. It's a very powerful idea. I saw it recently for the first time. I think it's worth, at the very least, thinking about it. But now let's talk about it.